Dear brothers, dear sisters, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon to you all. We are very grateful to Professor Dr. Farida Khanam and Farhad Umari Sahab this afternoon. Dear friends, as we have spoken, we have exchanged thoughts and we discussed. One of the important aspects of knowing the other, the religion of the other, is not only reading the texts of the other religions, both the sacred scripture as well as the theological literature of the particular religion. That's a very important aspect. But along with this, we have come to recognize that we must meet people who practice that particular religion. When we meet with them, we recognize how they live their faith, with their joys and sorrows, struggles and challenges, what gives them meaning in their life, what helps them to face the difficulties in life, we come to recognize. The other day we met Sister Jared Phillips. She said, when we meet, we not only grow in our desire to learn about other religions, but also we come to love the people of other faiths, our brothers and sisters. I have a couple of times in our conversation, I mentioned about Father Victor Courtois, the Belgian Jesuit who lived in Calcutta, was a pioneer in Christian-Muslim relations. He said that we must listen to the faith convictions of others. We also give witness to our faith when we are present to them. He said that giving witness to one another's faith, we come to recognize the features of our Heavenly Father in one another. Mean to say that we recognize that we are brothers and sisters to one another. This is the insight that Francis of Assisi, 88 centuries ago, when he met with Sultan Malik al-Kamil at Damietta in Egypt. When the Crusaders were raging for fight, raging for killing, Francis of Assisi went and met with Sultan Malik al-Kamil. Instantaneously, both of them recognized in one another as man of God. In living in that camp of the Sultan for 2 weeks, Francis of Assisi came to recognize that all human beings, without any exception, all of us are brothers and sisters to one another. The most profound impact on his life that experience had. He also recognized that the essence of human creature, the essence of creature, essence of human person is to worship God. These two profound insights that he experienced in the presence of the Sultan Malik al-Kamil, who practiced religion. So it's important for us to meet with one another and listen to them and ask for clarifications and enrich ourselves, a mutual enrichment between meeting with one another. Every year, I am very, very grateful to Center for Peace and Spirituality, the center that was established by Maulana Wahiduddin Khan Sahab. His daughter and his granddaughters and his students and a number of friends together, every year they come here to share with us their faith conviction and how they understand the religion, and also they are open to questions, clarifications. So dear friends, brothers and sisters, feel free to ask any question you want to ask. And ask that in a sensitive, in a very positive way, so that it opens up a conversation in this hall. Okay. With these words, I once again welcome Professor Dr. Farida Khanam. She was a professor at Jamia Millia Islamia Islamic Studies Department of Islamic Studies. And Farhad Umari Sahab is a graduate from Umrabad, Umrabad Ambur in Tamil Nadu. There is a big madrasa there. He is graduated from there. So thank you, Farida ma'am and Umri Sahab, for your presence here. May I invite Professor Dr. Farida Khanam to share with all of us her faith convictions about the Holy Quran and about the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him.
Thank you, Father, for such beautiful introduction. Sisters and brothers, I have always enjoyed coming here. You are so receptive, so positive, and I really feel very comfortable when I come here and address. I find an opportunity to share our thoughts with you. So today I have got two topics, Prophet Muhammad and the Quran. So I'll first take up Prophet Muhammad. So I'll first begin with saying that Philip K. Hitti has written a book on history of the Arabs. He writes, Muhammad was born within the full light of history. So we know everything about him, right from his birth, throughout his life, everything has been recorded. So he was born in Mecca, in Arabia, in 570 AD. So his mother was Amina and father Abdullah, but father died 2 months before he was born. Then when he was born, the mother sent the baby to his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. So Abdul Muttalib, he was a very, his personality was very good personality, very handsome. So Abdul Muttalib named him Muhammad. This was uncommon name in Arabia. So Muhammad meant praiseworthy. So in this way his name was Muhammad, and there was a custom in Arabia of that time that the babies were given to wet nurses because they thought that the environment of the desert is good for their health, and they have pure language, Arabic language, pure language, because this was Makkah was a city, and in the town there are so many people mixed, and then the language is also not the same original language that is in the suburban areas. So he lived in the suburb for about five years. When he came back, then his mother took him to Medina to her parents. But on the way back, the mother also died. Then he was given to the Abdul Muttalib, who was his grandfather, so he became his guardian. But he also died when he was just 8 years old. Then Abu Talib became his guardian. Abu Talib was a merchant, and sometimes he would go to trading trips also with him. So it was about after 25 years, his character was so He was so sincere, so honest, and so truth loving that people knew about him and people called him Al Amin As Sadiq. Al Amin means the trustworthy, and As Sadiq means the truthful. So, because of his honesty, he was asked by a rich widow, Khadija, to do his trading for him. She was the wife of a merchant, and the husband had died. So she used to do the trading, and she would employ some people for this purpose. So because the trading they had to go to different towns for trading. So the ladies could not have gone. In those days, it was very difficult because it was only the transportation and everything was camel. So she employed men to do trading for her. So when she employed Muhammad, and Muhammad was accompanied by one servant, Masra. He was Khadija's servant. So when he came back, the Prophet, he had made great profit. And Masra talked very highly of him, that he is of a very good character. So then Khadija got interested. You know, in those days, women were quite, had enjoyed all the freedom. Even in Islam, in the early days of Islam, women had all the freedom. It was later on that their freedom was curtailed, and they thought that they had to stay indoors, but they were free in ancient Arabia as well as during the early days of Islam. So she asked him that she wanted to marry him. Then Muhammad discussed the matter with his uncle, and uncle agreed with this proposal because she was a very, very pious woman, and everyone spoke highly of her. So they got married. But from here, his life as a seeker begins. Because in Arabia, there were many Christian hermits also. So people knew this, this custom that they used to go to isolated places like caves and jungles for spiritual meditation. So there were some Arabs also who were truth seekers, and they used to retire to such isolated places and for meditation, for pondering. And actually, Prophet Muhammad's ancestor was Abraham and Ishmael, who had built the Kaaba. But now about 2,500 years had elapsed. So their teachings had been distorted. People didn't know how to pray to God, how to connect with God. So these people were quite thinking all the time that why man has come to this world, where he is going after death. All these questions troubled him also. So these people were called Hanif, truth seekers. So instead of living a comfortable life with Khadija's wealth, he began going to such spiritual places like Gare Hira. There was a small cave. So he used to go there, meditate, and pray to God to tell him to answer all the questions that he had in his mind. So he was very disturbed that he doesn't know what is man's goal, from where he has come and from where he will go after death, what is man's destination. So one day when he was about 40 years old, then all of a sudden a human being appeared in the cave, and he told him that he was chosen God's prophet, and he told him to read some verses which he had brought from God. These are part of the Quran. So this was the first verse that was revealed to the Prophet. Recite in the name of your Lord who created from a clot of blood. Your Lord is most gracious. So he said he was unlettered. He was not able to read and write. In Arabia, there were very few people who were able to read and write. So he said, I can't read. So 3 times Gabriel said that read these verses. He said, I can't read. Then Gabriel embraced him, and then he began to read or repeat those verses. But then Gabriel left after some time, and then he was so confused. This was his first experience. He was so confused, he rushed back home. But Khadija, who was 40 years old at the time of marriage, so by this time she should have been more than 50 plus, so she was quite experienced, quite mature. So she comforted him and said that you are such a nice man, you help the poor, you never tell lies, you always are helpful to everyone, so God will never disgrace you. Then what she did, she asked him to, because he was very, very confused, it was a shocking experience for him. So Khadija said that you stay here, I'll go to one of my cousin Varaka. He had converted to Christianity, and he had translated some portions of the Bible into Arabic as well. So he was a scholar of those days. So she went there and she told the whole story, and then Varaka said that he must be the same person, the Gabriel who comes to prophets. He came to Jesus, he came to Moses. So then she understood what is the matter. Then she came and told everything to Muhammad. And now gradually he began to understand that he is chosen by God, he is God's messenger. So then what is the most important thing about a messenger? That they have to receive the messages from God, and that messages have to be communicated to other people. This is not the way of God to communicate to each and every person. He chooses a person, he communicates his messages, and then that person has to communicate it to the rest of the people. So the first thing he did was that the urgent problem was that those messages, those verses had to be recorded properly so that the people may remember them, may follow them. So first of all, he would repeat, and then he would ask one of his companions to record in writing, because he didn't know how to write. And then everyone used to remember. Actually, the whole Quran was not revealed all at once. Some verses were revealed. So and the verses are very rhythmic in tone. So it is easy to remember them, to memorize them. And those verses have to be repeated in the prayer also. We say 5 times prayer, so we repeat those verses. So usually it is easy for everyone to remember those verses from the Quran. So in the beginning, only his wife, his cousin Ali, and his friend Abu Bakr, and there was one servant Zaid. These 4 people had accepted Islam, and they used to say the prayers together. And even Khadija used to say the prayer together. Today we are not allowed to go to the mosque, but this was not the tradition in those times. Khadija, since day one, used to pray with the Prophet. Then it was, there was another thing is that those were the days of religious persecution. In those days, religion was a state matter. Only though that religion was acceptable for the common man to follow, which was the religion of the king or the chief of the tribes. So it was very difficult to accept another religion. So there was great religious persecution, and it's a long story that how Prophet accepted their insults, their persecutions. They would pelt him with stones. He would bleed while he was going to Taif. But the Prophet today there is so much fuss about shatm or persecution of the Prophet that that person must be killed who abuses the Prophet. But this was not the done thing. The Prophet always forgave that person, always avoided, never even retaliated, never even reacted. He would only pray for them. So I am also translating my father's book on this topic, Shatm Rasul. So this will become very clear that during the life of the Prophet and in the early days, such people were ignored. There was no reaction, no negative response, and the Prophet always prayed for them. At Taif, when people set street urchins behind him and they were pelting him with stone, he was bleeding. And at that time, when the darkness fell and then when the boys left, then he sat somewhere for rest. And then he prayed that may God help them to understand your message better. So he always prayed for such people. And then when the persecution began very intense, they used to they killed also some people. Actually, in Arabia, there were two types of people. One who had the support of a tribe, and those people who were weak, labor class, slaves. So when these people converted to Islam, so they were persecuted. Some of them were even killed. So when this became too much, then Prophet asked them to migrate to Abyssinia. It was a Christian kingdom, and Negus was the king. In Urdu we call him Najashi. So he gave protection to these Muslims, and they lived there for quite some time, unless the Prophet migrated to Medina. Only then they came back from Abyssinia to Medina. So actually what happened when Abu Talib was the chief of the clan, and there is tribe and then there is clan. So tribe is the larger group and clan is the smaller group. So Abu Talib was the chief of the clan, which was the guardian of Kaaba. So it was a very important post. And Abu Talib protected Muhammad. And that is why the opponents were not able to harm him much. They were not able to kill him. Otherwise they persecuted, but they were not able to kill him. So once Abu Talib died, then Abu Lahab became the chief of the tribe, of the clan. Then Abu Lahab was the direst opponent of the Prophet. So immediately he declared that now he does not enjoy the protection of the clan. Then the Prophet was left all alone, and there was no one to protect him from these persecutions. Then it was only then that, even then he did not retaliate, and he did not say anything to them that they are evil people and they are persecuting me for no good reason. I'm just telling them the message of God, and the message was that God is one, and you worship God and shun from all evil ways. Then finally, when they saw that Islam was spreading very fast, then they thought that Muhammad should be killed, and otherwise there is no other way that Islam could be stopped from spreading. So then when they planned to kill him, then God told him to leave Medina at midnight. In the meantime, the people of Medina had accepted Islam in large number. Actually, in Medina, there was agriculture, they were farmers, they were more gentle. And in Makkah, people were big merchants, so they were quite wealthy. And in Makkah, there was Kaaba, so in the Kaaba they had housed 360 idols. And because of these idols, tribes from all over Arabia used to come and pay their homage and offerings. So they were rich also. And so they were quite arrogant. And they made things so difficult that he had to leave his hometown. Then these people did not leave him there. In Islam, although there were 3 wars, I won't call a war but battle. So these 3 battles were all in defense, and there is a very clear proof that all these battles took place near Medina, not near Makkah. So the Makkans used to come to Medina to attack him. So there were some 3 battles in defense, and these were, my father called that these were skirmishes because they lasted only for half a day. The Prophet always avoided these battles. Sometimes he dug the trench, and there were many ways. Sometimes he negotiated. So when these people thought that Islam is spreading so fast, the whole Medina almost had converted. So they were still wanted to fight and finish till their last breath. So then the Prophet made a peace treaty called Hudaybiyah. So this peace treaty was 10-year no war pact. So when this no war pact was taken by accepting all the conditions unilaterally. Prophet accepted all the conditions of the enemy, of the attackers, unilaterally. Only then this treaty could be negotiated. So after this negotiation of this treaty, then there was peace prevailed, and Islam was spreading very fast because of peace. Earlier there was war. So during wartime there was no work was being done easily. So after very soon it happened that about 10,000 Muslims had accepted Islam. So the Prophet very secretly went to Makkah, because the Makkans were not accepting Prophet's terms, and they were trying to sabotage Islam. They were trying to attack whenever possible. So they had breached also the contract. So then he managed so secretly that when he entered Makkah, only then they were able to know that they have arrived in Makkah, and Makkah was conquered without any bloodshed. I think except 4 or 5 people were killed, and without any bloodshed. There is a long story. And when all these Makkan aggressors, opponents who had killed so many Muslims and made things difficult for him, he had to leave his own hometown, then all these people had gathered in Kaaba. They thought that now they will be killed, because in those times there were no jail, nothing. So all the prisoners of war were killed. Then they all came and the Prophet was there. The Prophet asked them, "What do you expect from me?" They said, "You are a noble brother like Prophet Joseph, and we expect nothing but good from you." Then the Prophet said, "Go, you are all free." Prophet did not punish even those enemies who had killed so many Muslims, who had waged so many wars, who had done all the atrocities that was possible. So when the Prophet forgave them all, so in everyone there is conscience. Their conscience was awakened, and very soon they all accepted Islam. That is why, in very short time, the whole Arabia accepted Islam because of Prophet's policy of forgiveness. And there is another policy, Talif Qalb, softening of the heart. So Prophet gave everything which was available to these enemies. And the Muslims, there were some Muslims complained that you are giving everything to them and not to us who have sacrificed with you, who have been with you all these in difficult times. But he was only thinking of bringing all those people within the fold of Islam, of conquering their hearts and not killing them. So then, after the whole Arabia almost had come in the fold of Islam, then Prophet made the last pilgrimage. For Prophet, this was the last as well as this was the first as well as the last pilgrimage. So after the pilgrimage of Makkah, he died. At the time of death, he was 63 years old. And Hazrat Abu Bakr, who was his oldest, most senior companion of the Prophet, he became his successor. So the Quran that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, it is a divine book. It is actual word of God in human language. So the Quran began to be revealed, as I told, in the cave of Hira in 610. So the Prophet was sitting there all alone, and these were the first verses. Then the Quran comprises about the chapters of the Quran are 114 in number, and there are 6,000 verses in the Quran. So the entire period of revelation of the Quran is 23 years. Actually, the Quran was revealed from time to time according to circumstances, not the whole book was revealed all at once. So the main teaching of the Quran is monotheism. So this monotheism, all the prophets were sent by God to humanity with this basic concept that God is one. We have to worship God, we have to discover God, we have to realize God. So this is the main theme of the Quran as well. So the Quran puts it thus: say He is God, the one God, the self-sufficient one. There is nothing like Him. This is chapter 112. So the concept of the one God is the central concept of Islam. It is this belief which is the essence of Islam and the sole source of all its teachings. So the main concept of the Quran is the creation plan of God. Why man has come to this world? What is God's creation plan? So God's creation plan is that man is an eternal creature, and just 60, 70, 80 years we have to live in this world for being tested. That we are being tested whether, because God has given us freedom. Whether we use this freedom for making wrong choices or making right choices. So the choice that we will make, so accordingly we will be given our place in the next eternal world. There is paradise, there is hell. So there is those who will make right choice, who will lead God-oriented life. So they will be given paradise. Paradise is God's neighborhood. So you can understand how precious paradise is. Then, according to the Quran, God's messenger came in every age. We believe in all the prophets. There is a tradition of the prophet that about 1,24,000 prophets have come to this world. But most of the teachings have been forgotten because those were different age. There was no press, there was no other ways of communicating the messages of God to people. So people just forgot those messages. That's why God had to send prophets again and again. But about 12 prophets have been mentioned in the Quran by name. So only the Prophet Joseph's story is described in full. The whole chapter is devoted to Surah Yusuf, Prophet Joseph, because that is a very, the Quran calls it Ahsanul Qasas, the best story. Then we have this is in the infinite mercy of God that God has chosen prophets, messengers to guide us. Otherwise, we would not have known what to do, why we have been sent to this world. And we would not have known that we are accountable to God. And after death, we would not have been found a place in God's paradise. So this is a great, great mercy of God that He has made this arrangement of messengers. Then we learn from the Quran that God has created angels who serve as intermediaries between God and man, because we can't connect with God directly. So it is, according to the Quran, it is through angels that we connect with God. They bring the messages from the Quran, from God to human being, which these messengers communicate to man. So angels are friends and protectors of human beings, and they are God's obedient servants. Angel Gabriel is called Ruhul Amin, the trustworthy spirit. As we learn from the Quran, the foundation of Islam has been laid on 5 principles, which also we call 5 pillars: to bear witness that there is only one God and that Muhammad is his prophet, to offer prayers, salat, to give alms, zakat, to perform hajj, and keep fast during Ramadan. So all these observances, faith, prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage, are not mere rituals, but they are a source of receiving divine blessings. In the Quran, it is said, Wasjud waqtarib. When you prostrate to God, then we are closest to God. Wasjud waqtarib means prostrate to God and be near. So there is a tradition of the Prophet that God created man and jinn only to worship Him. So this tradition has been explained by one of the most senior companions of the Prophet, Abdullah ibn Abbas, that worshipping means realization of God. We have to discover God, we have to realize God, And because God is invisible, so we have to realize God through pondering, through meditation, through our devotions. So then the next point is that after belief in God, that we have to regard all human beings as equal, and they have equal rights, equal responsibilities, and equal respect. The Quran enshrines only the basic teachings of Islam. The details of these teachings are to be found in the hadiths, sayings and doings of the Prophet Muhammad. The Quran is a very short book, so it only gives us principles, not details. The details are available in the practices of the Prophet. So often Prophet explained the verses of the Quran through word as well as through his deeds. Regarding social life, the essence of the teachings of the Quran is that God has granted freedom to everyone. This freedom in itself demands that people should lead their lives with restraint. If freedom is exercised without restraint, it will result in breakdown, destroying social life in its wake. So the every chapter of the Quran begins with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, because there are 114 chapters, so each chapter begins with this verse. So the occurrence of this invocation 114 times in the Quran is itself an indication of how important it is. Each chapter of the Quran starts with this invocation. To commence any undertaking in His name is to pray that God, in His infinite mercy, should come to one's assistance and bring one's work to a successful conclusion. So this is a short summary of the teachings of the Quran.
First speech. So thank you very much, Professor Khanam, for this beautiful and very powerful presentation speech you gave, especially in times where there are discourses on how to deal with people who are insulting Islam within the Muslim communities worldwide. It was very refreshing to have such a peaceful, stance on that. I'm pretty honest, I was very shocked when you said Muslim women are somehow denied entry into mosques. Because being from a Turkish family, there is no prohibition for Muslim women to enter the mosque. Of course, we have separate spaces, but I was is it only here in India the case? Because it's the first time I hear that. And given the fact that namaz is also one of the core 5 pillars of Islam, how is that possible that women cannot enter mosques? That is one of the questions which just I had in mind. Maybe you can.
She says namaz, offering namaz is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. In South Asia, you mentioned that women are not allowed to enter into mosque. It is somehow it is prohibiting them to practice their faith, or prohibiting them to the fundamental pillar, practicing the fundamental pillar of Islam. That's not the mind she wants to ask. Before that, she said a lot of very well affirmed your peaceful message. She felt so happy to hear you have presented, and also from your own life and from your commitment, Islam speaks. So she was expressing her gratitude and gratefulness. She asked this one question. Thank you.
Thank you. From the day one, Prophet's wife Khadija used to pray with the Prophet, not only at home, but because the environment was very hostile, so they used to retire to some secluded area, and there she prayed with with him. And Prophet himself encouraged later when many women had converted, and when he went to Medina, the first mosque was built in Medina. So he encouraged these women to come and pray and hear his sermons. You know, sometimes I'll just give you one incident that sometimes these ladies would come with small babies and they would start crying during prayer. And the Prophet said that I shorten my prayer. In prayer, you know, some portions of the Quran are recited. So you can recite more, you can recite less. So he said that I shorten my prayer so that they are not, so not to trouble them. But if they have to stand for a long time for prayer and the baby is crying, so for their difficulty, for their problem, he himself would shorten the prayer. He will not say that why you come with small babies to the mosque. So he encouraged to this extent. Some ladies said that there are so many men, we feel hesitant to come to the mosque. So give us some separate class. So he arranged for a separate class as well. So those ladies who wanted to come to the mosque, they would come to the mosque, and those who wanted to have separate class, for them he arranged separate class. And there were all the sorts of questions. When there is a new religion, there are so many questions. So these questions, they used to come to the Prophet for asking these questions. And he never said that you remain at home, why you are coming out. And there was no burqa, no scarf, no burqa. Just like I'm doing, this is Islamic dress. So it was all later what happened. The whole Iran, Persia converted, and in Persia, women were kept indoors. They would not come out. There is one couplet in a very famous poem by Firdausi. He said that our women, especially royal, those who belong to the royalties, even the sun has not seen them. They don't come out even in their homes. They will remain indoors in their rooms. So this culture, because they were in majority and the Arabs were in minority, so because when all of them converted, their culture prevailed. So the culture of the converts prevailed, and everyone began to adopt that culture. This is not the culture in Islam. You can read the Quran. There is no single verse in the Quran that women are restricted to do something, or only we have to shun from evil ways. Otherwise, everything good, we can engage in any good activities, no problem. We bring Quran copies for you all. You can see yourself. Is there any verse which restricts women to do anything good?
Yeah, thank you so much because I never heard that women are not allowed entry to mosque, because in Turkey, Azerbaijan, or even in Germany, because even like in Germany we have a Turkish mosque and there's always space for women, and like it's not only for Turkish Muslim women but every Muslim woman who wants to come. And for me it was like shocking that's like prevailing. It's a huge injustice to Muslim women.
You know, in ancient times, women were not allowed to go out because the outside outside place was not safe for women. There was no roads, no security, no safety, no transport, nothing. So women, because of that, ancient times, there was no facilities So they had to remain at home, and men used to go out and work. The life outside was very hard, not for women to handle. So that a culture evolves, develops because of those times, and that is ancient culture, not Islamic culture.
Thank you for your presentation. My only question is that is there a concept of resurrection or rebirth in Islam?
Man has been granted an eternal life. One short period, like most, we can say 100 years, is placed in this world, and the rest is placed in the next eternal world. So there is no rebirth in this world. We will be reborn in the next eternal world, and we also are eternal creatures. But in the next eternal world, there is no rebirth in this world.
I would like to know that is there like a concept of second coming of Prophet, and when if he comes, then what will be the sign and symptoms? How we'll know that second Prophet has come?
Difficult question. We believe in the second coming of Christ, but there are people are saying if the Christ comes, no one would recognize him. There are many traditions in Islamic books that of the second coming of Christ, but the problem is who will recognize him? It is people say that he will be so simple that no one will recognize him. I think you can answer this question better.
Ma'am said no. So the coming of Christ, as we also talked about, Christ is mortally taken from the cross to the heavens, and he would come back, and it would indicate the
we all believe
end
that
of,
he will come back.
yeah. When Christ comes back, then it's also the indication for the Akhri Dinka. So the world, coming to the end of the world. That's his coming is an indication that the world is going to end. That's sort of a
So
tradition.
many versions that some Muslims think that he will be a great political leader and he will rule the world. But this is not right. He will be spiritual leader, not political leader. No one knows very clearly about all these things. When I was younger days, I used to pray that when Christ comes, may God let me have that opportunity to meet Christ. So we all believe in this concept.
May I call upon Brother Vincent to propose vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It was really a wonderful time we had, and Madam has taken us all really into the world of Islam, explaining us about Prophet Muhammad and the Quran, their belief. Really, she has taken us into the world of Islam religion, and we also thank Sir for explaining the faith of the teachings of Maulana. Yeah. So we thank Sir and for having come over here, spending time with us despite your busy schedule. We would like to thank you for on behalf of all our friends, Professor Victor Edwin, and our principal. Thank you. Thanks a lot.